Hey, it's Molly here. Now, before we dive in, I want to give a shout out to our awesome sponsor, InvestorKit. At Ladies Finance Club, we are all about helping women crush financial independence, and property investing is a really smart way to do this. But let's be real, figuring out the right location, avoiding costly mistakes, and dealing with agents, it's a lot. That's where InvestorKit comes in. They've been named Australia's Buyer Agency of the Year in 2023 and 2024, and they're here to look after you, the property investor. They know the markets inside out, back every move with solid data, and take care of the tricky stuff like research, negotiation, and even connecting you with top property managers. Whether it's your first investment property or you're building your portfolio, InvestorKit makes it simple and stress-free. Big thanks to them for supporting this podcast. Visit investorkit.com.au to learn more. Hi, lovely. Welcome back to Get Rich, the podcast helping you do just that. Get rich and stay rich. Now, if you're looking to level up your finances this year, you are in luck because we are talking about the 5 must-read finance books in 2025 recommended by a financial advisor. And I've invited Dawn Thomas along, who is a financial advisor by day, a very busy mum of 2 Gen Zs and Gen Alpha by night, also a complete self-confessed super nerd. She's doing her PhD, and she's also did this awesome TEDx talk as well. But she hosts her own podcast called Start Well, where she reviews and breaks down financial books. So I felt like who better to guide us through the must-read books of 2025 than Dawn. If you're enjoying this potty, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And let's get into this. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me, Molly. I think you've picked the right topic for me, given how 2024 has unfolded.
Today, we're looking at what are the must-read books for 2025. As I said, you're very well resourced for this topic because this is, in fact, what your podcast is about. You look at books and resources and you break them down.
Yes, I spent 2024 looking at, popular books that I think people should be reading, should be more popular. And every time I pick up a book or a resource, I sort of have a person in mind. I think the point is that not every resource suits everyone. It really depends on your background, who you are, how you like to interact with the content. And luckily, there's heaps of resources out there.
Yeah, awesome. And for those who don't know as well, I know I mentioned in the bio, but Dawn, you're a financial advisor over in Perth.
Yes, I am. I'm in WA on a very sunny day today. But yeah, definitely representing the West Side.
Yeah. And I have to say as well, as far as financial advisors go, you're a very cool one. From what I've seen, you're cool. Yeah,
I'm a little bit nutty, maybe. And the thing is that the clients who get it, they're nutty as well. So we just live in this world of nuttiness.
Love it. So let's go on with that. So, and I wanted to give a shout out as well because your podcast is called Start Well.
That's right.
As well. So definitely check that one out. But for you, what makes a good financial book a must read?
Look, I think from financial books, I would separate them from that foundation book. Mm-hmm. And these 5 books that I'll talk about today are all foundation books. I think they should be able to give you a sense of how to start and then how to continue. Yeah. But the most important thing is that they don't make you feel like you don't get it or you don't belong in the conversation. I'm very big on collaboration.
Yeah.
And very big on, meeting where someone is at, so there shouldn't be any shaming or you should know this or putting in things to be so convoluted. That's why your book is one of my favorite books because from the get-go, you're in on the journey. It's true to its title and you're having fun as you're learning. So I think a good book keeps you in and keeps you going further along in your journey.
Thank you, Dawn. And I promise I didn't pay her to say that. That's lovely. And I always think like when you think of a book, it's literally someone's knowledge, all that knowledge put into like 300-400 pages and like what a gift that is. And for those out there who don't maybe you're not a reader, all these books come in audio version. And if you have Spotify Premium, you get free access to audio books, or there might be BorrowBox, or check in with your local library as well. There's always options out there. Mm-hmm. So let's get on with it. Top 5 must-read books for 2025. Which one do you want to kick off with?
I'm going to kick off with yours, Molly. So I think like with your book is so inviting and it's so surprising. By the time I got to your book, I had read a number of finance books. And I think every time I pick up one, I'll be like, what is it going to tell me that I haven't already read before? So I'm actually picking it up with a level of skepticism, right? Because I've been through a number of books. If we start off right off the back, it was the visuals, because there are people who are visual learners or visual readers, and they need to have that as an inviting way to start their reading journey. Or you said as well, there's the option of audiobooks with these books as well. So I say picking up the book, it already feels different. And I told you that there's an energy that comes off that book where you feel like, okay, I think I'm going to have a good time doing this. So how the visuals are, I think I told you this in the podcast as well. I feel like you're very much in the brain of your reader. You know who your reader is, and you are very deliberate with how you're talking to the reader. So I felt the language that was used, the examples, the imagery as well, that risk profiling one, I keep on telling you, it's just brilliant, where you've used shoes, is just helping someone understand a concept by it being explained in a different way, using analogies, using diagrams. So I feel that your book, it's called Girls Just Want to Have Fun. You're actually going to have fun doing it. And the response I get sometimes from some clients, we see couples, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's one of them that goes, Don, no offense, but financial planning is boring. I try not to make it boring, but they've been so used to maybe being a conversation with a partner who is very much into spreadsheets, graphs, and they communicate at home that way. So they feel that money conversations have to be this way. If you're not getting it in a spreadsheet, you're not understanding the jargon, that means you're not smart with money, and you don't belong in a conversation. I think your book dispels that myth. It's talking about a different way of learning about money, and that's why I've actually recommended your book quite often to clients that want to be able to learn about money that way, but have felt really apprehensive about doing that because they really believe in themselves that they don't belong in the money conversation or they're not good with money.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that, because that was really what I wanted to get across with the book as well. I wanted it to be like more of a fun resource, and also I wanted people who would never pick up a finance book to pick up that book. Well, thank you. I'm very humbled. What about book number 4?
Okay, so book number 4, it's Money School by Lacey Filipich. Yes. So I think about all of these foundation books that I'm talking about will help you get ahead. And like I said, the first example is particularly if you feel that you want to be welcomed in the money journey, there's your book. Now, Lacey's book doesn't have as many visuals, but she's very talking again from her experience, with her mom having a really good role model. And she's very, I suppose she also looks at the concepts that are out there. Like, we know that the FIRE movement is a very big thing, right? FIRE movement, but also she felt that she looked at the FIRE movement and when it didn't really talk about the quality of life. She has something that she calls FITER, which is financial independence and time rich. The focus is about building wealth and time is really the gold, right? So it's really interesting how she goes into concepts of what should be driving you, because all of this with money is that it needs to mean something. You're trying to make meaning of something, and that gives you the motivation to go on. So with Lacey's book, again, like all the foundation books, it will take you through budgeting, what you can do with investments, what you do with structure. She does touch a little bit on money mindset, but not a lot, but because she's also talking about career progression, the importance of negotiating your pay, things like that you also found that were important in terms of what you are communicating. And I think her book, I think like your book could be picked up by a lot of women. It doesn't exclude men. But I think her book would, possibly, you could go either way, my daughter picked your book and was like very clear that that's the book she wanted, and then my son, like probably he would have picked Money School, because I don't know what it is, maybe when something is too brightly colored.
Well, mine's very pink, so that's probably why.
I know. Doesn't make sense.
This is not for me. This is not targeting me. And you'd be right as well. Yeah.
It's right. You're not targeting it, but it doesn't mean that you can't pick it up. No, So I just think Money School, we talk about FIDA. She talks about,
I love that FIDA as well, about control over your time. Because I remember, I think it was in The Psychology of Money, he has this line and then he's like, the thing wealthy people want is control over their time. That's what they're all striving for. It's not like the bigger car, the bigger house. It's control over your time to do what you want to do when you want to do it.
Yes. And she hits the nail on the head. She has a diagram in the book as well about spending less time on activities like poopy activities and more activities that are gold, So she uses another term in the book, but we will keep it kind of friendly for your podcast. So it's that shift of what do you want to do with your time, with all of this. So I think that's a comprehensive book. It's a book that you're going to go back to, I think, at different segments of your life. Because I don't think you can kind of put in place every single chapter. It's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you read it, you put it back and come back to it with, now I'm having a new job. Yeah. What did Lacey say in that chapter about the job? And then you go to it. Yeah.
Okay. I love it. So we've got Girls Just Want to Have Fun. We've got Money School. Number 3.
Number 3, we have Glen James, Sort Your Money Out. Okay.
Sort your money out.
Yeah. Like I said, we're going through the scale. We're going from something my daughter and young women would definitely pick up with your book. Then we go to the more neutral side. And I feel like my son would have definitely picked up Sort Your Money Out. Yeah, I think it's a book that could be read by anyone. And Glen talks about, instead of fire, he talks about loot, which is live life on your own terms. So again, interesting with how we've come to this, but he's been very upfront again about his journey, because a lot of these good books weave in somebody's journey and what's motivating them to write the book, just like you did as well.
Yeah.
You know that there's a gap there, so it's happened with conversations with friends. And he talks as well about things like your side hustles, that kids can do. I do talk to kids about side hustles. Yeah, but I think it's a good foundation book to get you interested, and it's really entertaining.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
got
it's
some
humor
lols in there.
Yeah, the tone of the book, because all these books will cover similar areas. I think it comes down to tone. Like your tone is very warm, very inviting, and there's fun. Lacey's her tone it's probably, I wouldn't say fun is the term for it, but she takes you in, like it's a serious conversation, but it's still approachable. Yeah. And with Glen's book, he's going on the other side of his sense of humor with how he presents these concepts, so what should you worry about when it comes to debt? What shouldn't you worry about? But none of this is done in a judgmental way. Like all 3 books I've mentioned so far are not going to make you feel bad about being in debt. Yeah. It's really just talking about what's next.
Yeah, nice. Okay, great. So sort your money.
Yes.
Get your money sorted or sort your money?
Sort your money out.
Yeah, sort your money out. It sounds like a parent talking to me. Sort your money out, Molly. Love it. Okay, book number 2.
Okay, book number 2 is The Money Sandwich by Marc Bineham.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So again, now we're moving demographics as well. I would kind of picture someone picking up Marc Bineham's books, maybe would be someone in their 50s or 60s. Like you're kind of giving that to your mum or your dad for their present. Christmas time could be a good present. Yeah. Now, the beauty of, I think, Marc's book is that he's been a financial advisor since the dawn of time, You probably say that. And then now he's not giving advice anymore, but he's collected all these conversations that happen in meeting rooms, I feel. And he's talking to you like how you would talk to someone if you were in his meeting room. Yeah. Because it's not black or white. I think that's the thing about financial advice, is that someone's come to you, they've come with a situation, and then you're looking at, okay, how do we work with the situation and move forward? Yeah. And that's what he's done with the examples that he's looking at, with, let's say, someone considering home ownership versus renting later on in life. What are the pros? What are the cons? Yeah. He talks as well about the Goldilocks phenomenon with investing, which I've used in my presentations. When I'm speaking to like year 9 to year 11 students, I talk about your risk profiling tool. I don't use your imagery, but I explain it in the way that you have. But
Go for it. What's the Goldilocks?
The Goldilocks is when people leave their superannuation fund in the default option, in the balance option, because they believe that it's not too hot and not too cold.
Yeah.
So it's like he's breaking down, okay, why are we doing this, and what's the impact of not making a choice? So it's those sort of things. He's understanding his reader is in the midst of having elderly parents, but also children. Yeah. So how do you find the time to understand the concepts that are important for you?
Yeah. And just on that, because obviously you are a financial advisor, with that whole Goldilocks picking the default fund. And if people don't know what the default fund means, that just means when you sign up for a job, you get put into a fund. Yes. And generally that fund is what they call the default. And it's usually a balanced fund. So considered like medium in the risk
Correct.
level.
The government there's a whole paper about My Super, and that's my space that I deal with with my studies, is that I'm trying to get more young people to make a choice around investment out of the default, because there's a cost to them if they don't make a choice, right? Yeah. Because most of us are not going to get to our superannuation anytime soon.
No.
But the government has tried to make a choice that is right for everyone, right? But it doesn't make sense that whether you're 15 or 50-year-old, your default is going to be the same.
Yeah.
But I think it just requires that choice and that confidence from you to do it.
Yeah.
The effect of compounding, that ability for your investment to grow on top of each other and keep on growing on top of each other is really magnified when you give it time, when you feed it time, and you feed it a nice amount of growth return.
Yeah. So Dawn, if someone's listening and they're like, oh crap, I'm in the default, what would you recommend they do as a next step?
Yeah, look, it's so simple. You can just even go into your existing fund and look at an option that has more growth assets in there. And quite typically they're called growth option or high growth, or aggressive. What you really want to do is look at the little pie chart that comes with the option. Yeah. And you want to pick something that shows that it's got a high amount in growth assets. Yeah. So while this is not financial advice, the theory is that if you've got a longer time frame ahead of you, you can afford to take on more risk for a greater return. Yeah. So over time that evens out. Just don't panic when markets go down, because they always do. Just let it do its work.
And when you say like growth or aggressive, is that meaning more money in stocks, like all companies, equities, than in like cash and bonds?
Yes. And you see that, Molly, I like that you can sniff out jargon, like even inside, and like, you know what, I felt like I wasn't a jargon person, and then, I've been very aware of that. So I love the fact that that's why, again, you go back to your book, there's no jargon, but it's that bit of, if you make a choice or if you've got kids, why the Goldilocks phenomenon is important in that book as well. So if you've got kids, that's going to apply to your kids as well. Yeah. If they're over 18 and if they start working, they're going to have super contributions. If they don't make a choice with their first super fund, that fund is going to follow them to the rest of their jobs unless they make a choice. So you want them looking at the fund they have and then look at how they're invested. Really simple. And they'll benefit.
I think it's the first time I've thought about it, but like when they say aggressive fund, like that must warm people off, because people are like, I don't want to be aggressive.
Yes.
Like that's freaky. Like even the language sometimes I find in the finance sector, number one, it's very masculine, like bull, bear market. But then also, that's aggressive. I'm like, why is it aggressive? Why don't you just, I like high risk. But even high risk, people go, oh, I don't want to be risky. Yes. Yeah, I feel like it needs a little makeover. But anyway, I digress.
No, we'll be all part of the package. I think that we'll have a movement, Molly. You've got a movement where you're getting people to understand things, just around their finances. You're speaking to so many people and impacting them. I'm trying to get in there for like the young ones, in high school.
Yeah.
By the time they pick their first fund, I want them to be ready and just make a few good choices to help them out.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I do speak to a lot of women about super, and like I wouldn't say majority, but I'd say a lot of them don't even realize they can pick a fund or they don't have to go with the default option. And there's a lot of trust as well. And I'll use this example from the UK, because I was speaking to a lady and she worked, the super pension system slightly different, but same day, if you put money aside for your future and it gets put into a fund. She worked for a bank and she just assumed that the fund they put her in was going to be performing well. It ended up being one of the worst performing pensions that year. And she was like, what? But it's a bank. So this is why it's also really important just to find out, how is your super comparing? How's it comparing in the long term, not just like year by year, but how's it looking over a long time? And then if you need, it might be worth getting advice on that too.
Yes. And look at funny you should say that, because CBA Group Superannuation Fund was on the My Super failure list when it came out. So, for the listeners, what the government has done a lot of work around superannuation. Yeah. Right now, you'll find a lot of competitive super funds. Yeah. So that's why sometimes when I read things in chat groups and people go, which super fund are they in? And suddenly they overcomplicate the whole thing, right? They go down this rabbit hole and I go, you don't need right now the government has done so much of work. They've done the My Super comparisons where they're just comparing the My Super option, which is balanced. And so I know like some of my ex-colleagues were quite shocked. They had trust that if it was in an employer fund, surely the fund option would be good. But what's also shocking is that some of them received letters saying that it failed and they still left it in there. Because I said...
And if you don't know what that means, so if a super fund didn't do well, they would have to send naughty letters to their customers. And no, it's the same. Like some people would be like, oh yeah, I got that letter. Did I need to do anything? And I'm like, well, you might want to think about it. I don't know. Financial advice. Maybe check why they performed so badly.
Yes.
When everything else did really well and you're paying for it. Yeah. And I always use this thing like, Dawn, imagine if like every single month someone knocked on your door and they're like, hi, can I please have 11.5% of your paycheck? Cool.
Yes.
See you later. We'd be like, what are you doing with it? Where is it being invested? How much are you charging me? Yet with our super, we just go, okay, bye.
Yeah. Whatever. It's not my money.
It's not mine. Oh, is it mine? I don't even know if it's mine. Sure. Yeah. Bye. It's so funny. Like with super, we're just so unconnected with it. Where it's like, oh, that's a tomorrow problem.
Yeah, it's a tomorrow problem. And I think that was where, when talking to young people, it's challenging because if we're talking about really young, right? Like, some of your listeners might have kids in that bracket. Yeah. We've got the Gen Zs and the Gen Alphas coming into play, right? And how do you get them to think about something that's so far away? But again, you want them to think about the superpower they have, which is really time.
Yes.
The longer they wait to be active in this, their superpower diminishes. But if they start early, my goodness, they are going to get big wins for not much effort.
And I think the challenge is trying to explain that.
Yeah.
Because I know when I was even in my first job, I would get letters from my super fund and I would put them straight into the bin. I wouldn't even open them. I would put
the majority of people
right into the bin and I'd be like, don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And I was working for a bank and not one person at the bank explained to me what it was or why I needed it. And I'm like, okay, so I think there is like an education part on behalf of companies that they can do to help their staff and employees as well. And that's why we run so many corporate workshops. And I know you do a heap of workshops as well, actually going in and going, hey guys, this is really important. This is what you need to know because we've never learnt it.
Yes, we never learnt it. And, there's a cost for inaction.
Yeah.
It's
a big cost.
A big cost. So I did this TEDx talk for young people, right? So the audience was all 15 to 21 year olds. So I had 10 minutes to present my argument as to why they should care about super.
Yeah.
And one of the things you could do as a listener is go on to Money Smart, it's a calculator.
Yeah.
And that's what I discussed in that is that you could actually look at the outcome of super for someone who's, let's say 21, starting with a balance of $6,000 with an average return of 7%. Versus someone that has an average return of 8%. So that might be a very conservative difference between the long-term outcome of a balanced fund versus a growth fund.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at the difference and we're looking at present value, because these calculators build into indexation and, the cost of living as it goes on, it's about 100,000. So someone starting on 60,000, earning 65. That's the cost of a decision.
Yeah.
So if you're not making a decision, then that's that cost. If you're making a decision, that's the gain.
Yeah, $100,000. And that's a big difference at retirement.
Yeah.
That's a big difference at retirement. Where can we get a copy of that TED Talk? Is it online?
Oh, not yet. Okay. Not yet, Molly. It's I've been told that it'll be released at some point in 2025.
When it's released, we'll make sure we add it to the show notes so you can go check that out as well because I reckon that will be awesome.
Oh, thank you.
I don't think even young people, I feel like a range of people could probably do with watching that and understanding why they need to care about their super and how to check on using the different calculators as well.
And also just one more stat to just throw in there is that 10 million My Super accounts belonging to people aged 40 years and under.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
That's a lot. Gosh. And, okay, so that was Money Sandwich. So book number 1.
Yes, look, we're not ordering this in terms of favorites. These are just books.
This isn't favorites ordered. This is just...
they're all favorites. They're all favorites.
Oh, because mine's in there. I'm sure that would be number 1. Jokes. So book number 1, but not in any order.
No, in any order, is Buying Happiness by Kate Campbell. Yes, and I think her book as a foundation book, of course, again, covers things like debt, budgeting, investing, growing your fund. So that is the norm with all of these books. You are going to go through all the topics, but she spends a lot of time on money mindset. I think as the name suggests, is about actually having a good relationship with money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she puts in a lot of activities in her book for you to kind of get a meaningful experience with money and understand what gives you joy, right? So one of the exercises, I believe, was first note down what's important to you in life, and then look at your expenditure and look at where your money is attributed to over it. So it's things like that give you the awareness, and then looking at it going, oh, would I then shuffle any of my expenditure, or would I then reprioritize what I think is important based on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember, I don't know the exact quote and I probably won't say it right, but they're like, show me your bank statement and I'll tell you what's important to you.
Yes, it's so true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even though we may not be aware of it, like I think in that sense, like her book is like a truth book.
Yes.
It's really going to help you see into your own money soul. I think that's what it is.
It's probably going to make me feel quite shallow when I realize how much, I spend on my hair and my nails and
I know.
other things like that. Like, my God, it's expensive being a woman sometimes. Come on.
Molly, I think that's the thing. If you find that it's important, then it is fine. You allocate it, right? I have a client, so she's gorgeous, and she says that we talked about the budget, and we just went, actually, I'm not wanting to reduce that because that makes me happy, but I'm willing to reduce the other thing. I think that's the thing. Like money you can't do everything with all your choices. It's about prioritizing it.
Yeah, and I always say to people when they're budgeting or putting their spending plan together, whatever they like to call it, like it's your budget. Like you can change it. Like you can take from one area and put it in another area. No one, like you're the one in charge. You're the one in control. So you don't have to feel this restriction in certain areas. You just need to make sure the numbers are working.
Yes. So it's your money at the end of the day. So you might as well decide what kind of relationship you're going to have with it.
Yeah.
It's just not worth the stress from day to day. It just needs to work. The few steps in there in different areas. It doesn't have to be overcomplicated. I think that's where all of these books have in common, is that they've not tried to overcomplicate things.
Yeah. And I think especially when we think about money, and so many of us have like this view that it is so complicated, but when you break it down to what its essence is, it's quite simple. Like when you think of a budget, it's just literally allocating money, telling money where to go. It's making sure what's coming in is less than what's going out. That's very basic math, actually. Yeah, we can complicate it so much.
Correct. The danger, again, with like going into like a forum and asking a question like that is that there'll be many responses from different people, and it almost like makes you more confused. I mean, that's when I read all the different responses. I mean, as someone who may not feel confident about their own knowledge, you go, who should I actually listen to? I would say if you actually go to these books and start as a foundation, that gives you a lot more confidence to then go into the discussion, and then you can build. Like you mentioned, Psychology of Money is a good one. I would say that's not a foundation book, but that gives you other things to think about once you've done a foundation book. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, this has been awesome. And there's some great starting points, especially like resources. If you're listening and you're like, okay, 2025 years, the year I'm getting my money shit together, there's some great books that you can start with. And I always love to know from our guests, I guess, how do you budget? What do you use to budget? Is there a certain method you use? Are you a spreadsheet person? Do you set up buckets?
Yeah, look, I'm not a natural spreadsheet person, but I have used a spreadsheet to first get my overall idea of where expenses are. And then I have assigned that according to my banking structure. So, and sometimes you've got to go back and tweak it. I think that's the thing, but it's not stagnant. Everything is going up and everything's reviewing. So where I am right now, because I'm going to be on leave, is I'm already reviewing all my insurances for the year. So I didn't do it maybe at renewal because I feel like that didn't fit my life. I'm like, I'm going to be off for 2 weeks. So I've started, looking at personal insurances, pet insurances. Because that's one of the biggest expenditures that I have. So it's time to relook at that, reset it, and then update my spreadsheet and then adjust it. And I feel like where you think something has worked before, then you can actually change it. So there's some things I want to change with my bank structure as well.
Yeah. And I love that it's not a cookie cutter approach. Like it's constantly, you said you're constantly tweaking. And I think for people listening, it's about finding what works for you and then making sure that you're checking in and you're readjusting when needed.
Yes. And also like, don't feel bad that you've got to do it at a particular time. You haven't done it soon enough. I think even that's what you said as well, Molly's like the fact that you're doing it is already important, that you should acknowledge that you're doing it. And so just just do it. Like I'm doing it when it suits me because, you've got things happening in your life. You can't just always do it at a particular time and be perfect about it. You just got to just do it when you can do it.
And the fact that you're listening to this podcast is a great starting point. So snaps for you. Well done, you.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Dawn, so much for coming on and chatting. We're going to put links in the show notes where you can check out those books, but also once your TED Talk is live, we'll be linking that as well. Thanks so much for joining our podcast today.
Thank you so much, Molly. And if I could just say, you gave me 5, but there was really a 6th in there as well. So I've got to give a shout out to Cristina for Kids Ain't Cheap, because that won a Money Inclusion Award. Look, she won an award, so that's fine. Okay, it's fine for her to be one of the 6 instead of the 5.
There you go. And we actually have Anna on the podcast as well. So.
Yes, I thought it'd be remiss of me if I didn't mention her. But I think the thing is that they're fantastic Aussie authors writing amazing books. Yeah. Give them a chance.
Absolutely. And we'll include Anna's book in the show notes as well.
Yes.
Thanks, Anna.